Thanks for joining. So we are here to discuss the last release of a report from Antrophic for where they disclosed that there was an attack that was orchestrated through them. So the summary of the overall is they claim that a state sponsored adversary that they don't define APT because they don't have any matching to an APT. They define as a group and they internally catalog them as GTG 1002 is a group that abuse cloud Anthropic product to orchestrate a multi-stage intrusion and that roughly targeted 30 entities. The report is kind of granular and explain the structure and the phases of these attacks. And you can find that public in Anthropic website and communication. This talk is trying to understand what's the dynamic and what is probably something that should be announced. First of all, assign a GTG that is a group doesn't mean that is a confirmed APT. So obviously they are not a threat intelligent company and they don't assign APT number, but they don't have enough intelligence in sense of information to link it to an actual state-sponsored adversary. So why claim that is state-sponsored at the time that there is no evidence or link to back up? So this kind of statement is generally made based on techniques, command center. So if an attacker used the command center infrastructure before and it was addressed to an APT, it would make sense to find this link between the state-sponsored adversary or not. Threat intelligence is an art, and actually the amount of correlation of data is huge. But already the beginning of a report claiming that it is sponsored when there is no actually real link make all entire statement a bit weak. This one from a threat intelligence perspective. The fact that cloud got abused to attack 30 organization is for sure something, but the question is what it does mean in terms of control on their side. So from their description, the attack started with an operator, a human operator, an attacker, an actor, where he actually instructed and said that he was performing a pen testing, an ethical testing of those infrastructures. Now, the fact that the social engineering in terms of prompt is so easy to be bypassed, it should be already something where in the report there is an entire page describing which action they took to avoid it in the future. That's worrisome because we are talking about 30 organizations. That means 30 different targets and everything. What I found really interesting in the report is the fact that it is described as a fully orchestrated and automated attack, but along the way there are a lot of disclaimer about hallucination and the fact that the attacker had to do a human interaction to be capable to perform the attack. And this one is something that is kind of common for whoever is using LLM product and trying to do a sort of integration and try to cope with this hallucination. So it's really interesting, and I think is one of the actual food for thought that scaling something like that anyway forced to a human interaction on reviewing the targets and the result. I was extremely interested on use it as more as an example. Mine is not a critic about Anthropic, and actually, it's good to know all these incidents, and I always welcome this openness. It was just a desire to know more about the security control in terms of considering that a prompt social engineering is quite common, what is done behind under the hood to avoid it. That was my comment more than everything. And also how you can claim the say sponsored if you miss that connection or that certain the certain link to that. Now, in an attack like that, it's nice to use it as a scenario and as an example because I wanted to track and trying to match a Mitre ATLAS that is LLM related and a Mitre attack that is more about the technique that they got used. All presentation that I show you here is actually available on my slide share. So you'll find the link. Just Google my name and surname on SlideShare. You'll find it, but I will place a link. Now let's go in deep on what the face of this kill chain. So as we say, the actor claim to perform an ethical pen test. If we are looking into the Atlas technique around it, they are mapped as LLM prompt injection, jailbreaking, because it's bypassing safety, and an integration with API and abuse of the commercial AI, because obviously it's not in the terms and condition of usage of cloud, this kind of abuse. In terms of a traditional Mitre attack, is actually gathering victim identity info, so target profiling is a start of a normal kill chain. In terms of reconnaissance, here is where we go more into the MCP tooling discovering, and we have cloud connecting with a various tool and perform what in Mitre attack is a normal active scanning, and is categorized also as a network discovery and victim host info in summary. But in terms of AML, the technique is actually the same because the technique that Atlas defined as T006 is actually relevant to the same that you perform normally. There are a lot of API integration across the orchestrator, and so probably the technique that I see more relevant into this phase is the 40, and because it is an inference between API access and the tools talking to each other and use it as orchestrator. So the real link to Atlas is probably more that, because whatever you perform during a pen testing is actually falling in the normal scanning and information gathering category. From a vulnerability analysis, here is where the hallucination started to trigger. Now, I understood from the report that there was a human actor, the criminal, looking at this and trying to correct those kind of information. It's nothing different from who is trying to automate pen testing in ethical manner. He had for sure the same kind of matters. So that's the reason where most of the time using a RAG is actually better, because in my experience, you limit the hallucination. Because having a RAG that contains the information that get queried before. Interesting point anyway, the fact that even on a state-sponsored kind of attack, they fall in the same experimental problem that we all find. Initial access, there is a link between the threat Mitre and the Atlas. Now, the question is how they will manage this overlap between the two frameworks, because more and more we will have the need to perform analysis like this one on an incident where you need to analyze the Mitre attack technique, but also the LLM technique. So it would be nice if Mitre would start to map the techniques that are common, like the one that I show here, and trying to identify some unique identifier between the two and merge. Because I don't see, I really appreciate Atlas, but I think he's missing a lot of A2A protocol, agent protocol kind of attack, because it's so specific to LLM but doesn't look outside the LLM. So more and more the Atlas only analysis will not be enough. You need to compensate with others. So it would be good to have these reference points that are part of a normal kill chain. Credential harvesting, they collect files, they started to parse. Here is the point where I'm wondering if actually an attacker wouldn't, and an ethical pen tester as well, if don't ingest that data directly in a RAG, wouldn't be actually in a vector database to be used by a RAG, wouldn't be actually a better technique than just use an LLM parsing the result like that. So create a vector database out of it. I don't know, there is not much of the information on this stage. I would be really curious from a technical perspective, the design of that. Lateral movement, remote services, valid account, nothing blowing away because it's a normal routine for any pen testing. Cloud queries DB, extract password, hashes. It would be nice to understand if there was also some sort of rainbow table, some cracking involved, and other things into that. But as you see, at the end of the day, excluding a bit of social engineering on LLM is a standard kind of pattern, nothing blowing away. The exfiltration is actually something that made me wonder, because at the time that the LLM process this data is there too. So wouldn't be, in terms of control, smart for an MSSP of this level to actually have some DLP, some controls in terms of, okay, you are dumping hashcat, you do have some sort of cracking, you do have some tools. Those are already signal of an attack or a malicious activity. Later you can block it and see it, but I really would like an extra report on the controls around it, because I think the key concept of any attack in hacking is the lesson learned also from a blue team perspective. It's generally the normal routine is a feedback loop where you actually present all this one. So I would like to see this follow up around it. Cloud generates markdown reports, timeline, credential maps, analysis summary, and campaigns state for and off. Here, I'm not sure that in Atlas you have the right end side of a kill chain. This actually is more offensive towards the LLM as engine more than actually something specific. There are a lot of information also to be seen in terms of which command center is used. Is the orchestrator used as a command center, or there is also command center laterally where some things get used. So an interesting case. I really like it. I would have been liking to have more deep inside. I do understand the portion about the exfiltration, but doesn't have much of information because I could expect that actually their infrastructure is part of an attack. So it's becoming actually also part of that attack from a forensics perspective, from a lot of perspective. Now, I'm not touching the legal aspect of it, but it would be nice to understand, especially the beginning of a kill chain, all LLM prompt injection, which kind of controls after this incident was done, which granularity is also given to somebody that get the cloud infrastructure exploited, because you could have a good reason to have all this orchestration in place and get abused. So from a log perspective and whatever else, is fascinating. It's what uh, keep me hooked and interested to never stop learning. But I thought it was nice to see also these gaps between a normal atlas and a normal attack analysis. And I hope Atlas will link more and integrate. Also because Mitre attack already suffer all this fragmentation, because we do have so many Mitre attacker now. We do have the one for the hypervisor. We do have the one specific for Kubernetes. We do. It's getting so granular, but is missing some link across them all. So they sound as independent project without a proper link. If I also add that a lot of security vendors are not trying to be part of that anymore, like they used to be, it could make sense for them to find a generic ID to be used by all vendors. So, if by mistake you are part of Mitre, I hope I give you food for thought. Thanks a million. I appreciate. It was a quick one, but I thought it was a bit different from the amount of bots that are hammering you on LinkedIn and whatever such a network you are using. At least with some bit more depth security wise. If you're interested in this kind of content, please like and subscribe on YouTube. I always appreciate. Take care. Cheers. Bye bye.